Hi, welcome to Grade 9 Science. The purpose of this video is to give you some insight into the three levels that we offer. That's our academic science course, our applied science course, and our locally developed science course. And at the same time, I want to give you a bit of information in terms of what units we cover and what they're all about. I first want to start off with the academic science. If you are a student who's thinking about potentially going to university or college, then this is the course that perhaps you might want to consider. Many university programs require you to have academic level sciences, and at the same time many colleges recognize the academic level also. There tends to be more homework at the academic level. The pace is a lot faster, we cover more content, and the quality of work we expect to be a lot higher compared to the other levels. Again, as we are trying to prepare you for university, and we want you to be successful. The next level is the applied level science. And if you are a student who's thinking of going to college or doing an apprentice program, so maybe you want to be an automotive apprentice, doing an automotive apprenticeship or an electrical apprenticeship, you do need to take as a minimal the applied level or the academic. So at the applied level, how is that different than the other levels? Well, there tends to be a little bit less homework. Yes, you still have to do homework, but there's a little bit less. The pace is a little bit slower because the content isn't quite as intense, and the quality of work perhaps doesn't have to be at a university level, but it still has to be at a good quality level that would be acceptable for college students. We try to do as much as we can work in class, and we try to do a lot of more hands-on activities for the applied level students. The next level that we have is the locally developed. This is a level that's designed for students who have no intention going to university and have no intention of going to college, but they want to graduate and get their mandatory minimal 2 science credits, and the third one there's a bit of an option there. And for the locally developed, there's very little homework. There might be some, and the pace is a lot slower, and really what we're trying to do is to really give you some knowledge in terms of science and your environment. As an example, one of the topics that we'll cover is WHMIS. So you'll need to learn about the chemical symbols on chemicals. What do they mean? So if you're working at an establishment, so let's say you're working at Reinhardt's, you're working at Tim Hortons, if you happen to be working with any chemicals, maybe for cleaning or whatever it might be, they'll have symbols on them, and so you'll know what those symbols mean and how to act in a safe manner. So what do we learn in grade 9 science? There's 4 units. There's the chemistry unit, there's the ecology unit, there's the electricity or physics unit, and lastly there's our space unit. The first unit I'd like to take a second to talk about is the chemistry unit. This is a unit where students will start to learn about the alphabet of chemistry, so the elements in the periodic table. We'll talk about compounds. What are compounds? You know, in terms of, let's say, water. What does the H stand for? What does that O stand for? Why is it H2O but not H3O or H4O? So these are all the types of questions that they'll be able to answer by the time we're done. We'll talk about chemical reactions, and they'll be able to try chemical reactions. So some of them might be getting 2 liquids, pouring them together, and you'll get a color change like the following. Other chemical reactions that they might see are ones that involve adding a chemical to water and it gets really, really hot and maybe gives off a light. Maybe they get cold. Students will have the opportunity to use Bunsen burners. Yes, you'll get to actually light fire in school. It's in a controlled manner, so maybe they're melting water and doing some data on that. Maybe, or melting some ice. Maybe they're burning some chemicals to see what color they give off. So as an example, burning a chemical, and if it gives off a green flame, that means that there's some copper in there. So different chemicals give off different colors. So there's a whole bunch of different types of labs that they'll get to try firsthand. They'll also get an opportunity to learn about practices that are used in the lab, how to handle chemicals safely, what sort of safety issues do they need to be aware about in case they ever work in a lab, how to measure chemicals properly, how to measure the volume of chemicals, or simply, what do the symbols mean on the chemicals. So there's WIMA symbols that are on every chemical in a work environment. So whether you work at Reinhardt's or Tim Hortons or Subway, any chemical that they have in those establishments will have symbols, and the students will learn about how to handle them safely in case they ever run across them in the workplace. The next unit that we cover in science is the ecology unit or the biology unit. In this unit, students will learn about the interactions between plants and animals. We'll talk about biodiversity. Why is that important in today's age as animals start to disappear? We're going to see that they're going to become more rapidly disappearing because food chains are affected. We'll talk about the nitrogen cycle. I like to talk about in terms of how that relates to farming. In terms of nitrogen in the ground and how that helps plants. We'll talk about fertilizers. We'll talk about the carbon cycle. We'll talk about, I guess one of my favorites is wolves. There's a lot of hunters in the class who go deer hunting, and we'll talk about why wolves are actually important for helping the deer population and to making them more healthy, which always intrigues students because they think wolves are bad because they eat the deer that they're trying to hunt. So by then, it's nice to see that there's some perceptions that are changed. Another lab that we tend to do in the biology is what we call the owl pellet lab, and this is a lab where owls can't digest all the bones from the prey that they eat, and so what they do is they spit up this pellet of fur and bones, and it sounds really, really, really gross. They're sterile. They've gone through the proper process, and what we do is we take those apart, extract all the bones, and then based on the bones we put them all together and make the organism to see what it would look like, and then we can take that information from those bones and actually figure out what it is. Is it a mouse from a house? Is it a mouse from a field? Is it a rat? Is it a shrew? Is it a vole? Is it a bird? So it's kind of like a CSI. Students tend to really love this lab. At the start, they find it a little gross, and by the end, everybody seems to really enjoy it. I have a picture here so you can see what it looks like. So the third unit that we'll talk about in grade 9 science is the physics or electricity unit. This is a unit where we'll talk about all sorts of topics that relate to electricity. It could be talking about what's the difference between static electricity versus current electricity. We'll talk about voltage, current, resistance. We'll talk about what are ohms and amps, what does that mean. We'll talk about why is it dangerous to plug too many appliances in an outlet. What's actually happening from a science point of view. We'll end up making circuit boards, so they'll be able to make up the circuit board so that there's switches, so that perhaps light bulbs are wired in series versus parallel. And again, for all the electricians out there, could you imagine having your house wired in series? What an issue that would be. And it's a good opportunity for them to learn about electricity, because one day they might be working on a car or they might be working on something in their house, and it'll give them the tools, if they know how to use a voltmeter and ammeter, on how to diagnose what the issue might be. So I hope you found all this information helpful. If there are any other questions, please go see guidance or drop by the science office, and any of the science teachers would be glad to sit down with you and go through more of the options and what we do, and perhaps what would be the best fit for you for grade 9 science. Both myself and the science department, we look forward to seeing you in science, and we'll see you next semester or next year.